In this video I'm going to be showing you how to take a knife that is completely blunt and use various different whetstones to take it up to completely shaving sharp. So this is the knife that I'm going to be sharpening today. It's just a kitchen knife and it's pretty blunt at the moment. It's not completely terrible, but it's not very good for using, and there's quite a few chips and nicks out of the blade, and I'm going to be fixing that today. For those of you that have been subscribed to my channel for a while, you may remember a video that I did a while ago called The Laziest Way to Sharpen Any Knife to Razor Sharp, and this involved using a buffing wheel on a bench grinder made out of MDF to power strop the knives, and with this method, once you were set up, it only took around 2 minutes to sharpen each knife, whereas when using a sharpening stone it takes around 15 or 20 minutes to get it to proper razor sharp. That method got a lot of views, but also quite a lot of hate, with people saying that there are much better ways to sharpen a knife, and a lot of people suggested using a whetstone, so that's basically why I'm making this video. So the first thing you're going to need is going to be the whetstones, and you're going to need some different grits of whetstones. These are the whetstones that I'm going to be using, and they were sent to me by a website called knivesandtools.co.uk. This is a really great website with a lot of interesting knife related product, and you can buy these exact whetstones from their website. If you want to check out their website or the whetstones that I was using specifically, then the links will be in the description down below. So for sharpening the knives, you're going to need more than one whetstone. You're going to need various different grits of whetstones, and grit is the number of particles per linear inch. So a 100 grit whetstone is going to have 10 times less particles per linear inch than a 1000 grit whetstone, and the 100 grit whetstone will leave a much rougher finish. But that also means that it will remove a lot more material a lot faster. So I have 4 different whetstones here, and I have a 100, a 1000, a 2000 and a 5000. And obviously the 5000 is going to be the smoothest and leave the finest finish, and the 100 is going to be the roughest and leave the roughest finish. The next step is you've got to soak the whetstones in water, and if you don't do this, the stones will be ruined when you use them. Just place the stone in the water until all of the bubbles stop rising from it. For my stones, since they're a special synthetic compound, it only takes around 20 minutes, but for some proper whetstones, which are actually made from Japanese stone, then it can take up to 2 hours. I then put it in this special clamp thing, which is made for holding them, but you don't really need this, it's just so that they don't slide around while you're sharpening the knives. It is quite useful. It's now time to level the stones, and since these stones are pretty much new, they're not going to be very much out of level, but I'll just demonstrate it to you anyway. If the stone isn't flat, it could create a wavy edge on your knife, and you really don't want that since it's not very good for cutting things. So I take a pencil and draw a crisscross grid across the entire stone. I then take a small dressing stone that also came with my sharpening stone kit, and I start to rub it across the top, and this will start to level it, and basically rub it across the top until all of the pencil is removed evenly. That way you know that it's pretty flat. If you don't have a dressing stone, you can also use a rougher sharpening stone, but if you have a 100 grit sharpening stone, then it's pretty hard to find a rougher sharpening stone than that. After doing that, all of the pencil lines have been removed, and the top of the stone is now very smooth and flat, ready for sharpening. So as you can see, this edge has got quite a lot of damage. It's got a couple of chips out of it, and that's why I'm using the 100 grit stone first. If the edge is just dull but it's got no damage to it, then you can go straight to the 1000 grit stone. So now place the knife on the stone and start to raise the spine until you find the right angle. You'll be able to feel this much better with your hands, and it's normally about 1/2 of a thumb width at the back, and it's between 15 and 20 degrees. You then want to evenly slide the entire blade over the knife, starting with the tip and curving it towards the back. There's a lot of different methods to do this, but this is the one that I've found best for me to use for larger knives. For smaller knives, I like to just put them horizontally and slide them backwards and forwards. The important thing is to keep your pressure and angle completely constant, and this will create a very nice smooth blade. If you keep on changing your angle and the pressure that you apply, it will grind away uneven parts of the knife and the blade won't be nice. The hardest thing is keeping the angle correct, and it does take quite a lot of practice before you get the angle perfect, so expect on your first couple of knives for it to not be great. Once you've done quite a lot of sharpening on one side, you can then flip the knife over and do the same on the other side, and you want to keep even number of passes on each side so that you get an even sharpness on the blade. I keep on doing that until the blade is completely ground smooth and there's no nicks in it anymore. After about 10 or 15 minutes, it's then time to move on to the next sharpening stone. As you can see, despite being brand new, this stone has a little bit of a wear spot right in the middle here, so I can just rub that out using the dressing stone to make it completely flat. The 1000 grit stone leaves a lot smoother finish, and it's a lot nicer when you slide the knife over the top, since it's a much higher grit. Another thing that you can check to make sure you're keeping everything constant is you should be able to listen to the sound, and it should sound constant, the exact same, along the entire sweep of the knife. If you find that the knife is digging in, try making the angle slightly shallower and applying less pressure to the front of the blade as you push it forwards, and apply slightly more pressure as you pull it backwards. After about 10 minutes on the 1000 grit stone, the edge is a lot smoother and a lot finer, and you can already feel that it's much sharper. But it's still not perfect, and it's nowhere near as sharp as I want it to be, so it's time to move on to the 5000 grit stone. I'm going to skip out the 2000 grit stone because I don't feel that it's really needed for this process at the moment. It was very easy leveling the stone, and it became so smooth that my dressing stone actually started to stick to it a bit like a suction cup. It was quite cool. I spent about 15 minutes using the exact same method on the 5000 grit stone, and you can feel that it's very smooth on the 5000 grit stone, and it's pretty much the same as just rubbing the knife over paper. That's what it feels like. Obviously it's still rubbing away some material, and it polishes the edge so that it's mirror shiny. You can see on this super fine stone that as I'm sharpening, it's leaving behind a black residue. Don't wipe this off because this is actually the residue that helps to sharpen the knife. You also want to make sure that this residue is evenly distributed across the stone, and if it's not, you need to make sure that as you sharpen the knife, you're using the entirety of the stone for the sharpening. After that, the knife is pretty sharp, and as you can see, it just destroys the paper test. If you don't think that a knife has to be very sharp to do this, just try and take your kitchen knife or pocket knife and try and do this, and you'll see that it actually has to be really sharp. Another harder test for the sharpness of the knife is to see if it slices through newspaper. Since it's much thinner, it's much harder to cut. So I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to use these sharpening stones, and again, if you want to buy them, check the link in the description, and I think that they're a really great product and definitely worth having a look at, even if they are quite expensive. If you want to check out my old tutorial on how to sharpen a knife really quickly using a power buffing wheel, then check the link in the description down below to it, and even though it's got quite a lot of hate, I still think that it's quite a good way of sharpening a knife. Just a little disclaimer, this is only my method of sharpening a knife with a whetstone, and there's hundreds of different ways to sharpen a knife with a whetstone. Some may work better for you for the whetstones you've got and the knives that you're sharpening, or the way that you prefer to sharpen with them. So you can experiment and find the best method for you. If you want to catch early access to all of these videos up to 5 days, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. And if you want to get regular updates on projects that I'm doing, consider following me on Instagram.